And welcome to another episode of Don't Get This Twisted. I am the professor, along with my co-host, as always, Tina. How you doing, Tina?
Hey, Professor. How's it going?
Oh, absolutely great for a whatever day it is, because they all fucking mix together. I don't know. So today we're going to do a subject that actually, if you can believe this, my mom came up with. So a little shout out to Nancy in Idaho. She was like,
hey,
you should do one on this. And I was like, no, we shouldn't, but I'm going to write it down anyway. So we're going to do one on erectile dysfunction.
Yay.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, obviously, as you get older, those are the things that, people make fun of or jokes at. But I think that, it's a lot more prevalent than you think. And as always, I like to throw a couple stats out there because I think stats help us to get through the opening here.
Let's hear it.
Here's the one that I was quite shocked at. It says in a 2018 review, estimated that ED affects about a third of men.
Whoa. No shit.
Yeah, a third.
Wow.
So, and then it says in 2019, global is about 3%. Oh no, ranges between 3% and 76% globally. That's
kind of a weird range. 3%
it's very
to
broad.
76. What the hell is that?
Yeah, I think it's very broad. But I think that it's kind of interesting. It says the study found around 52% of men experience some form of ED. 52%. Let's see, the total ED increases from about 5 to 15% between the ages of 40 and 70. So
that's it, huh?
Yeah. Increases with age, obviously, I think that's going to be there. A study published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine found that ED affects about 26% of men under the age of 40.
Wow.
So you're talking about a quarter of men.
Right.
That's
already.
Yes, that's pretty high. So I think it's obviously the prevalence is pretty high. The Cleveland Clinic estimates that that it's normal to have trouble getting or keeping an erection for up to 20% of sexual encounters.
What?
So 2 in 10. Yeah. And it says having trouble getting an erection more than 50% of the time can indicate obviously a medical issue. Makes sense. If you can't get it up 50% of the time, you probably have an issue.
Okay.
But it does say that 20% of sexual encounters total have some kind of issue.
Wow.
2 in 10.
That's high.
That's high. That's pretty high, I think. At least I think 20% is pretty good. So here's a couple of causes. And I think that some, we kind of talked off air, some aren't going to be a shock. Alcohol use, illicit drug use, smoking, diabetes, high cholesterol, heart disease, obesity, sleep disorders, some medications such as blood pressure medication. This one, we both kind of went, I wonder why, but scar tissue inside the penis. Who knows?
Well, not why, but how?
Yeah, that we'd probably have to try to find out some more information.
Yeah. And
then some of them are obvious because of their medical conditions, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis. But here's the 4 that I thought hit kind of, everyone: anxiety, stress, depression, and relationship issues. So these are things that obviously of the mind that are going to not help the situation. I think
agree.
this is the risk factors, age, obviously diabetes are the big one, obesity, depression, cardiovascular issues. Those are the ones, because obviously it's blood flow. Those are the kind of things. As we get older, I think that men don't want to talk about it. I think that's one of the bigger things.
I don't think women do either.
I have a friend who works in a medical clinic, and she has told me that like she's seen young men like in their mid 20s, in there because of this, which you would think is more of a mental thing than it is anything else. Right.
I would hope so.
I mean, you have to throw all those other things in there. Obviously, if it's an overweight guy at 25, he's going to have issues or heart disease or whatever's coming from that. But let's say a healthy 25-year-old kid, which she said she has seen, or what you would think is a healthy young man having this issue. So maybe we have to look at it from the standpoint that it's obviously both a mental issue and a physical issue, because, for men, it's easy. Like, let's say the first thing that a doctor is going to do is say, first of all, they want to test your testosterone, right? Where's your testosterone level? If your testosterone level comes back normal, then they're going to start looking at the other things in your life that we've talked about before. Are you having issues here? Are you having issues there? Blah, 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 blah. So, and then tell you to either quit smoking, stop drinking, exercise, do a healthy diet, all the things that a doctor would tell you for the normal stuff.
Right.
There is something on this, the site that I'm looking at that is pretty interesting. And they say talk therapy. Says
Wait.
you made it. So it's basically looking at it from a psychological standpoint, with the stress, depression, PTSD. So it's basically go to a therapist and talk about maybe what else is going on in your life. And maybe that will help.
I think it's even more than that. I don't think men really talk. And I think it has to do in part with the interaction between each person in the relationship. But I noticed that as you go along, when things don't sit well and they stay inside and they don't get talked about, they don't get dealt with. So it's never anything that could be fixed. That's got to cause a lot of problems, especially for men. Because in my line of work, I see women, they talk at least to each other. Men will never say a word about certain things. And I was blown away when I realized that, because I thought everybody talked, and that is not the case.
No, it's not the case at all. I think even male best friends wouldn't talk about that kind of thing. Most. I think it's a personal thing. I just think that we look, I'm very private, even with my best friend, about anything, like relationships, any of that stuff. To me, that's something that you hold dear to your heart. There's something wrong with going with surface things that are an issue, like in your relationship.
Right.
Which we're going to end up talking about multiple times in our podcast. There are going to be a million relationship shows. But I think that you look at it from the standpoint of if I'm not going to talk about why me and my girlfriend are having issues at home, I'm definitely not going to tell them that my dick's not getting hard. You know what I mean? I know that comes off crazy, but it's the truth.
It just sounds so like,
I would be
it's really honest. Let's put it that way. It's really honest, but it's not the way I would think somebody would say that.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not getting an erection.
Something's wrong.
Yeah. I think I'd be more apt to talk to a female, truly.
Yeah, I get that.
I just think that because then I could go from the standpoint of hey, what have you seen? Well, what kind of encounters with your male mates have you seen? Mostly if it's somebody who's maybe not married, or someone who is married and been married for a long time.
I got to say, I talk freely with everyone. And that's one thing about me that is across the board. And no guy has ever said anything about that, ever. And my friends tell me a lot of things, but that's not
one of them.
That's not one of them.
Yeah. Well, again, I think that that's such a personal thing because it's hard to talk to somebody about that. Like, mostly because I think it's a two-way street, like we talked about. It could be a total medical thing. I mean, a total medical thing. Like, you could be really into your partner and really into this, and you're just like, oh, I lust after, and you have a, blood issue. You're thinning blood, you're overweight, you're not pumping blood. There's a lot of things when it comes to that. But on the flip side of that is that it's a total mental thing, and you're screwed at work and you're so stressed out, and maybe you're not telling your mate about that as well. So now it's a double dosage of like, oh shit, work sucks and blah, blah, blah. And then you still feel intimate with them. And then that happens. And then it's a whole other thing that comes from it. So then your sex life is going to suffer because maybe you don't want to have sex anymore because you're afraid that might happen again.
Or there's the flip side where the woman thinks he's not into it anymore and she clams up, or not clams up.
No,
clams up. We'll just say that.
Up. Yeah. I mean, I think that there's, that is a medical term.
Is it?
Yeah, it is on this show.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Is there a definition for that?
Yeah. I mean, you're right. I think that then you have your female mate that thinks that, oh, he's not into me. And I get disappointed, and we're both disappointed. And then you just end up, laying in bed that you're two boats passing in the wind. And so I think there's a lot to this where you really have to look at both science, obviously, with the medical side, where it looks like obviously there's so many things that can really be a problem. I mean, you have to really kind of start looking at, do you have high blood pressure? Do you have high cholesterol? Testosterone. I mean, they have testosterone replacement therapy now.
Really?
Yeah. So, I mean, even that is something that is looked at like, oh, you don't have enough testosterone. They literally give you testosterone, which is, it's like steroids. I mean, I knew people that were on steroids that were taking pure testosterone, and man, it made them angry as all hell. But it made them want to have sex like a rabbit.
Hey.
Like a rabbit.
Next.
Like to the point where, like
I get you.
Like my buddy had told me, this was years and years and years ago, but I mean, to the point where like he couldn't get enough, like the wind blowed and he was like, ready to go. and his poor wife was just like, okay, like enough. Like, can we take a small break?
Right. Is there a fill in here?
Yeah. Like, so I think the mental thing, mostly from the male perspective, which is funny because a lot of people like that about our show, is that we're giving them a female and a male perspective on pretty much everything.
Yeah. That
there is something to it. Like your mate is going to think something no matter what you do.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
no, you didn't. Go.
I actually called a couple of my clients who talk very open and honestly with me about everything in life, and probably because I do too with them. And I went to them because I know if anybody had something to say and could give me like their honest opinion, they would. Mm-hmm. So we talked about erectile dysfunction, and they told me about different situations in their life that they had gone through. And everybody had, like the women that I asked, all had experienced that with their mate at one point in time or another. And one of the ladies, because I asked her, I said, well, how do you help them get over it? Or how do you not get offended or worked up? Or, how do you not have a reaction as a woman?
Sure.
And she said, it's not about you. His body parts are not about you, just like mine weren't about him. She said, you need to support, love, try different things. For instance, there was a time when they were trying to have sex, but as soon as he went to put it in, it was going limp. It wasn't staying hard.
It wasn't staying hard. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And they were having a great time and everything was positive, and then that happened. So he ended up getting pretty aggravated, and she had to kind of talk him down. So all they did was snuggle that night, and she just rubbed him until he fell asleep. The next day, for some reason, she said it didn't seem that like, he wasn't that enraged. Like it wasn't a problem. He was more like, let's just push on, and like it never happened.
Sure.
Then the next time they started to mess around, she decided to just blow him and let him completely go and do that. And she said because she didn't put any expectations on anything, and she just kind of rolled with it, that he was able to come back around. And it had to do with him fighting with the teenage son, and the job was going a little bit nuts, and he was gaining weight because he was just stress eating at work. And, there was a lot of things that went on, but she said that they were able to work through it. And because she acted like that and was just like, hey, it's no big deal, I got you, he was able to open up. And sure. I found that to be like, first of all, how evolved does a woman need to be to not put it on her own shoulders? Because as women, that's just what we do. But also to love somebody enough to just work through it with them, I think is just an amazing, I don't know, it made me like her more,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can understand that. Like even the part of like how you're having sex, if it's something that's planned, that can go south. If it's something that is like, we have to do this in hurry because of this, that can be a problem. I think that when it comes together in general, when there's no plans and it just happens, because then it's life happening and it doesn't feel forced or like
a chore.
Okay, well, I mean, yes, a chore, or like, hey, we better knock this out because we got to go to Susie's daughter's birthday. I mean,
yes, but if you say that at times, so sometimes you get an okay, let's do that real quick.
Right. And you get the better side of that.
Yes.
I agree. But I think like anything where like, I couldn't imagine being like, well, on Wednesdays we have sex.
Yeah, no.
Because then it's like, oh, are you kidding me? Like, because then you're having to perform, and there's something to that. And like, that's what I'm saying, where it's like, it doesn't feel natural. It feels more like I only have this amount of time, mostly if you're dating, where you're like, I can see you for 3 hours today, but I got to go home. And you're like, and so then it's like a circus seal, like, like you better perform. And I think there's something to that when it happens naturally, where you're like, hey, you're just hanging out and watching a movie, and this happens and this happens. I think probably those are the better situations.
Yeah, but how often as a society are we just hanging out watching a movie? I mean, up until, the virus hit, like nobody had time for movies. We were all rolling as fast as we could in 100 different directions.
That's probably true. But I think, and again, I think this comes back to whatever relationship show we do again. There's something to planning a night where let's see what happens. Everything doesn't have to have a number code to it. Because when you start having a number code to it, you end up having problems like this, where you're just like, yeah, it's not fun anymore. Like you have to keep things interesting. And I think that that's another part of this. Like part of what I talked about earlier was talk therapy. Your friend did talk therapy within her own house. Mm-hmm. where it's like, look, I understand this is something that's going to happen, or it does happen in people. Don't worry about it. We're going to take this day by day and go from there. And I think there's something to that. I mean, what she did is big, big, big.
Yes. And when she did it, it was way before there was any therapy going on. That, it wasn't a popular thing to go to therapy when she was dealing with that. So I thought that for her was really, it was kind of evolved. Even now hearing it, I was like, well, I'll check you out. Yeah. That's a good idea.
It's a great idea. And I think that's with anything. We were talking off air before we came on to do this one. It's no different than the female orgasm, where you could, some people don't, and it's hard, and you can be frustrated, where then you become so frustrated that nothing works no matter what you do.
Yeah.
So, and it doesn't mean that there's no intimacy, love, or sexual attraction. It just means that somebody's not listening or not doing the right thing, and you're not clicking.
Yeah, there's also the fact that 1 in 3 women have some sort of sexual abuse that happens. So there's that side too.
Yes.
And that's a lot of what I hear too. Women that have problems doing that, they've been abused. There's been things that are going on. So it's far beyond just not doing it right. It's inside of her head. Sure.
Well, and again, obviously with this, I mean, there are psychological conditions that go with erectile dysfunction. It's on the list of risk factors. There is things with it. It looks like, really, I mean, obviously, when you start looking at the things from the standpoint of being physical, overweight, because with that comes, restricted heart flow, blood flow. Same with smoking is what it's telling me. But, you're looking at, like, when you look at the bigger things, it's like high cholesterol. That's a blood thing. High blood pressure, diabetes. These all walk hand in hand, where you're looking at blood flow.
Yeah. And
blood flow at the end of the day is what makes us work.
What were you saying about the BMI again?
Oh, that one. Let's, so this one says, gotta love that I'm the interweb guy.
Isn't it a 25% BMI?
Yeah, let me grab that stat for you. That stat is here.
I should have wrote that down. I'm so sorry.
No, don't worry about it. Okay, obesity. It says men who are overweight have a significant risk of developing ED. As many as 79% of people with ED have a body mass index over 25.
79%.
So you're looking that most of the people who are having this issue are probably overweight.
Right.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's, and it makes sense. It just does. I mean, you're talking about your heart having to pump blood to not only the rest of your body, but to the one that makes it work. Yeah. So it's really one of the bigger things, I think, and a lot of the things that I thought was kind of interesting too, is like, drugs, using medications. Like one of the ones says like antidepressants,
right?
Bad for you. Anything that treats high blood pressure, prostate conditions, those all, like if you have an enlarged prostate, those are problems that are going to deal with blood and blood flow. That's why you need to go to the doctor when you're 50 and get a finger in your butt. Can't say it any other way. It's a huge thing. I mean, it's will keep you alive.
Right.
And obviously it'll keep you, your erect penis, or at least help with it. It's funny. It even says pain conditions. So it talks about like injuries. If you've had injuries that are on arteries or nerves, which again sends blood to all the major places.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. I mean, like I said, I'm 50, so this is the future. So you obviously getting in better shape is the thing to do for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
To have a great sex life and a longer life to have sex.
There you go.
You know what I mean? Like, as an older, and again, it's funny because older men like to end up with younger women, but if your thingy ain't working, they're not going to stay around. Women, older women, go to younger men because everything's working. Except for relationships, they want to stay with the older man because he's the one who's got his shit together.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of an interesting thing where, like, if you're dating, you might be dating the younger guy because you're getting the fix. But fix. But I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how else to say it.
Oh my gosh.
But you're getting your fix, right? But he's dumber than a box of rocks.
That's how I like my fixes.
I don't like my fixes
I'm
like
kidding,
that.
I'm kidding.
Yeah. I mean, I dated a girl when I was 40. I want to say 46 or 45. She was 25 years old. It was amazing, with the exception of talking to her. I mean, she was a nice person, and I don't want to shit on her for that, because I won't say that.
Right.
But we just didn't have anything in common. Like, I would be like, "Hey, you remember this?" She's like, "What's that?" Or no. I'm like, "Oh yeah, you weren't born."
Oh yeah, old references.
Yeah. So I think, you start looking at this situation for men. It's obviously it's huge. If you look anywhere, there's Viagra commercials or emails coming to your email all the time.
I saw something while I was watching Hulu today that you could online now order your erectile dysfunction medications, and they've got like 20 different brands. It's not just Viagra. Mm-hmm. They've got 20 different brands, and you talk to a physician on the phone and you get what you need for your orgasm. And I thought, wow, we've come a long way, because you used to have to go to the doctor and have a stress test.
Call now.
It's a Zoom call.
Seriously.
From a person you don't know.
Yeah, and probably in another country.
And you have a plethora of of medications to choose from. I don't know. It was a timely commercial for me to see, because I didn't know how much there was out there for the problem. I didn't know it was such a problem.
Yeah. I mean, I know, because like I said, I have a friend who's a nurse, and we discussed that at one point, because again, she works in a clinic where she sees the worst, disgusting things you can think of and things like that. So, but obviously with the commercials, it's got to be a problem, because they're pushing a drug that obviously is helping people. Mm-hmm. So, and like you said, now it's like you get a prescription over the internet.
Yes.
It's not like and I'm assuming that the doctor you talk to is a physician. So they probably ask you all the same questions that they're going to ask you in person, because there's no test for it.
Yeah, but you would think that if you're going to be prescribed something like that, the doctor would check your heart, would do some basic blood work. I mean, to me, that seems like playing with, your body, going to somebody like that. You're
playing some Russian roulette, assuming you don't have a problem.
Right.
And again, like, yes, I'm sure they ask you simple questions like, hey, do you weigh 300 pounds? I mean, but
I get it.
it's obviously much bigger than we would probably have assumed, and here's the crazier thing. Just imagine how this was before Viagra or before the drug that would help you.
Yeah.
So like you look at like the 90s or the 80s or 70s where like it just stopped. Yeah. Like a weird thing. I mean, and talk about a relationship killer probably in those days, because there was no, I'm sure that the therapy talk in the 70s was shit.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They're just like, well, maybe he thinks you're an old hag. You know what I mean? Like, or whatever, you know what I mean? So I don't know. And I think there are other issues. It's the psychological issues of like porn. I think porn has just killed people that there, there's men's look on that is such a weird thing. Like if you're not getting this crazy, sexual experience, you're not turned on, or you're not getting anything out of it. So, as much as you can say porn is probably good in some cases, I think it's probably really bad in others.
Again, I think a lot of that goes back to psychological issues or non-issues as to whether it would affect you negatively or positively.
Sure.
Yeah. And I would say that right now in this world as we live it, I would say that stress, anxiety, depression, relationship issues, and weight are the big ones, because who hasn't been stressed out? Like everybody I talked to is saying, yeah, COVID was really hard on me. I really had I
really hard. You think so?
For some people. No.
Yes.
But they talked about how much anxiety and how much anger, or how much fear, how much stress, and the relationships, because everybody being home. I think I would say that if all these things cause erectile dysfunction, then it's got to be even higher than what we're looking at.
Oh, probably. I'm sure the last 2 years have been absolutely horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, we know for a fact that I mean, this has hurt people's relationships for sure.
Right.
Just being locked up with somebody, even the ones you love. I mean, someone that you want to spend your time with, when you can't go somewhere. Ooh.
Yeah. No, I get you. It's been rough on everybody.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I'm lucky because I've been to work every day. I never missed a day of work. So for me, it was like, it was literally normal. Like I would talk to friends of mine during this shit and it would be like, yeah, everything's fine. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, I go to work every day. So I didn't have to work with that crazy. I mean, I still had to work with the anxiety of being in it, but that part didn't. So, I mean, I didn't have to worry about that part of the thing. But yes, you're right. This has probably hurt people's sexual relationships hard. And I use that term in a joking way as well as not. I mean, this has had to hurt people's feelings, people's relationships. Could you imagine if you're a couple and you have 3 kids that are locked up 24 hours a day? And I'm talking about people who never left the house. Both worked from home, both worked with the kids screaming. When you went to bed at night, the last thing you wanted to do was probably sex.
Yeah.
And if you did, there was probably some of those issues where you're just like, I'm so damn stressed out. Like it's just not working today.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that it's got to be a difficult thing to talk about in a relationship, just because obviously men have, not an ego, but we have machismo. We're macho. The last thing we want to do is talk about that, even with our spouse. Like, I'll just take care of it.
Even want to look at it enough to talk about it.
Well, no, exactly. I think there's look, we are a different creature, and that's putting it lightly. Like, we are a different creature. So when it comes to something like this, where machismo and macho and everything's about dancing your rear feathers around to get a woman, and then it doesn't work, and there's no explaining to that girl, like, no, I'm totally into you. Like, I want to see you every day. You turn me on. It's a medical thing. It's got to be the most difficult thing to say to somebody. I mean, absurdly difficult.
And if you hear it on the opposite end, you shouldn't take it personal. And I think we all need to listen to my client that said we need to support and try to find different ways of doing it without getting upset if it doesn't work.
Right. Without thinking that it's you.
Yes.
Yes. Because I think, look, love is a weird thing. So when it comes to that, I think that, yes, you can be totally in love, totally down. And when something like this happens, if the person you're with, the first thing they say is, don't worry about it, that's got to be the biggest support system ever. Just, I understand this happens. We're going to get through it. It's just a setback. Let's find out how we get back to what was happening before.
Yeah.
It's got to be that way. I think, just from hearing that, it's, if you have that support system where you're just like, oh yeah, we're going to make it work. It's at least a start. It's a start.
And there's other things that women could do too. Like, there's different toys and there's games you could play. There's ways of enjoying your partner without him even touching you. And I think that that's a good avenue to also go down. Because if this is a medical condition, if this is a problem that's going to continue, then try to find healthy ways, healthy games, healthy things that you could do together to keep the intimacy and keep some sort of sexual something going on. Because there's a lot that could be done, and find ways to enjoy each other. Because I think if we as couples do that and try different things, then it's not a problem. It's just something you're going through. Sure. And not only that, but it could fix a lot of the anxiety and stress and depression he's already having.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And vice versa. I mean, look, women have stress. And I think that when it comes to it, and it's no different than a woman just not being in the mood, where, like, you think, like, they're never in the mood. Well, stress comes with that, or low self-esteem, or, again, relationship issues. There's a bunch of things that come with that. So I think you have to be able to talk. And, once we do our sex show, which is coming, but I think we're going to find that those issues occur in a normal relationship where ED isn't a problem.
Right.
Obviously with, we're not doctors and we're not psychologists or shrinks or whatever. Obviously you go to a doctor, first of all, and hopefully one that you go into the office and they take your blood pressure before they give you these said drugs.
Yeah.
Because you're right. Now I kind of thought about that, and that's kind of scary.
Right.
But obviously if the drug works, it's probably a medical condition that is part of the problem that you can try to solve with eating better, exercising. Obviously 79% of the people who have this are overweight.
Yeah.
That should be a tell sign of this problem. Absolutely.
That's because that's a huge percentage. That's like 3/4 of all of the people that experience it.
Yeah. Over 3/4. Like, so put down the French fries and it'll be hard.
you got to keep a lot of French fries out of your mouth.
Yeah. I mean, one or two, just have one or two. And then, so just stop buying French fries and just ask the people, can you just throw a couple in the bag?
I think it's also too, just trying to have a healthier relationship. People need to start talking and they need to start being real. They need to be supportive and quit looking at things like this is somebody that's your enemy. If you're with somebody, they should never be considered as somebody that you can't talk to, be around, hang out with. That they should be your number one. And if you don't have that, you're in the wrong relationship. Correct. So try to talk to each other, try to be supportive, try to not look at, oh my gosh, it's not like this. So now what? Because life is never how we think it's supposed to be. And there's things we're going to all have to work through. We just need to do it together.
Correct. It's never that easy. Nothing's easy.
No.
So I agree. So final words?
I think I just about said it.
Awesome. I'm going to say, just try to be healthy. I think reading these statistics, it's obviously the health side of this is the first thing you need to deal with.
Yes.
And if you're not in that demographic, then you go to the psychological part. Why is it not working? Go see a doctor. If you need to take a pill, don't be ashamed of that either. Obviously, there's a lot of people taking them.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and on that, let's give our shout out to the people listening to the show. We had another download in India, so we're up to 6, which I find quite interesting. Yeah. So there's people in India listening to us. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Obviously, we have a couple of new listeners, some in Colorado, who's a friend of mine, who's a podcaster. He is enjoying. So you can listen to us on all the majors, Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon. We're on all those. Feel free to look us up on Facebook. We're there too. And we have a lot more coming.
And please follow us.
Yes. Subscribe so you get the downloads. So, cause then they'll just come to you and you'll see them there and you can listen to us and enjoy. And again, any kind of feedback is great feedback. Mostly if you know us, feel free to talk to us personally and go to Facebook, leave a message. It's under Don't Get This Twisted. And we'll see you guys in a week from now. Any thing to say before we sign off?
Just thank you all for listening.
Awesome. And as always, this is an opinion show. So don't get this twisted. We're just having a little fun and saying what we think. And interviews, we're going to have interviews. Trust me, it's coming. And we'll see you in a week.